The Phoenix Suns are poised for a championship victory this season. After losing in the NBA Finals last year, the Suns are doing a great job to put themselves right back in that same position, but potentially win the championship this year. And this is all made possible due to the great play of their star guys, as well as great team basketball. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention I started up an MMA channel recently, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. After the Phoenix Suns had a magical season last year, making it all the way to the NBA Finals, of course they didn't win last year, but it still was a very impressive season. Many questioned if the Suns would be able to recreate that same success into this season. But pretty early on into this season, the Suns were able to answer that question with a pretty emphatic yes, as they did have the #1 seed in the entire league. But even besides the record, when you just watch the Suns play out there, they were doing a lot of the same things that made them successful last year. Their star guys in Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton were still playing at a very high level. Offensively, they were running very crisp sets. They were finding the open guy for a wide open catch and shoot 3-point jump shot. They were cutting all the way to the basket for easy dunks or layups. And overall, their offense just looked as good or even better than it did last year. But not only did their offense look as good or maybe even better than it did last year, their defense also is at a very high level. And when you have that combination of playing great offense and great defense, you're probably going to be a pretty good team. And the Phoenix Suns clearly were this year. And going into the playoffs, of course not everybody, but I would say probably the majority of NBA fans picked the Phoenix Suns to win the championship this season. And it was mostly due to the fact of how they played during the regular season, as well as the experience they gained from last year, especially losing in the finals. And more so than anything else, people just feel like it's the Phoenix Suns year. And going into their first round matchup against the Pelicans, the Suns did end up winning in 6 games. And although most people thought the Suns probably should have won in 4 or 5 games, Devin Booker was injured in that series. And also towards the tail end of that series, the Suns certainly looked a lot better than they did early on. And in their second round matchup, the Suns are going up against the Dallas Mavericks, and most people expect the Suns to win this series in 6 or 7 games. And at this point, the Suns took care of business at home and are currently up 2-0 against the Mavs, and it's looking pretty good for them in the series. Now, of course, even though the Suns are up 2-0, the series is not a given due to the fact that the Mavericks are clearly a very, very talented team, led by Luka doncic, who's arguably one of the best players in the league. But I think at this point, the Suns are definitely in a great position. And if they continue to play at the same level of basketball that they have been playing, they should win this series. And basically what I mean is their top guys in Devin Booker and Chris Paul need to continue to go off like they have been. They need to continue to play great team basketball like they have been. They need to continue to play great team defense, again, like they have been. Basically, the Suns have been playing perfect basketball so far in the first 2 games. And although it's certainly not a given, let's assume for the sake of the video that the Suns do end up beating the Dallas Mavericks and move on to the Western Conference Finals. Now, in that matchup, they would play either the Memphis Grizzlies or the Golden State Warriors, and I think both of those matchups would certainly be very interesting. But first, let's talk about the Warriors, because I think going into the playoffs, most people thought either the Suns or the Warriors would win the championship this season, so to see both of those teams face off in the Western Conference Finals would be an absolute treat for NBA fans. Now, although I think the Suns are primed for a championship victory this season, it doesn't mean that it'll be easy. There's a bunch of different factors for why, but probably the main reason I say this is the death lineup that the Warriors are able to trot out there of Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green. I just think that lineup is absolutely deadly and a very difficult matchup for anybody to go up against. But even besides that lineup that the Warriors have, they also obviously have a very talented and a very deep roster. Similar to the Suns, they have a great head coach and play a great brand of NBA basketball in terms of running crisp offensive sets as well as playing great defense. They have some great top-end talent like Steph Curry, and Jordan Poole has really emerged for them this season, as well as Klay Thompson has always been good over the years. And overall, it would just be a very intriguing matchup. But now talking about the potential matchup against the Grizzlies also have a pretty talented roster. When you talk about guys like Ja Morant, of course, Dillon Brooks, Desmond Bane, Triple J, they just have a very talented roster top to bottom. Now, one flaw I will say about the Grizzlies is they don't necessarily have all that much playoff experience, especially moving far into the playoffs. But I think the fact that they have a ton of talent on the roster kind of makes up for that. But in terms of their offense and defense, the Grizzlies certainly do run a pretty good offense, I would say, as well as they play pretty good defense at times. Now, I would say for the Phoenix Suns, the matchup that they probably would prefer would certainly be against the Grizzlies. I think it's an easier matchup for them. Not necessarily saying the Grizzlies can't win that series, but I think out of the Warriors and Memphis is certainly the easier matchup for Phoenix. Now, obviously, the Mavs are no given, as I mentioned before in the video, and the Suns need to focus on them first. But if the Suns were to go up against the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals and they were to win that series, I probably would say they're going to win the championship at that point, because even though out of the East there's some great teams like the Bucks who beat them last year, as well as the Miami Heat or even the Boston Celtics, I personally don't think the Sixers are making it out of the East. But out of those three teams, obviously they're very formidable and all have the capability to beat the Suns. I would just say the Suns probably would win the championship and have a better team overall than those other teams if they were able to beat the Warriors, because that would be their toughest challenge probably in the past 2 seasons, in my opinion. I just think the Warriors are a very, very good team, and that death lineup they have is very dangerous for anybody to go up against. But the great thing about the Suns is they have a very young lineup out there besides Chris Paul, and the significance of that is if they do or they don't win the championship this season, it's not like they're going to completely fall off a cliff. They're probably going to be close to this level or maybe even get better as the seasons progress, due to the fact that the younger guys on their team are only going to improve as time progresses, you would expect at least. And although Chris Paul certainly is getting up there in age, they do have him under contract for quite some time. So if CP3 is able to stay at somewhat of the level that he's playing at currently, which I would have no reason to believe he wouldn't be able to for the next season or 2, maybe even 3, I think the Suns are going to be just fine, and they would potentially be right back in that championship race next year. But obviously, I do think they're going to win the championship this year. I don't want to make it sound like I don't. But for the rest of these playoffs, the Suns just need to continue to do what they have been doing in playing phenomenal offense, moving the ball effectively, having the ball in Chris Paul's hands, especially late, where he typically makes the right decision, have the ball in Devin Booker's hands late as well for that game-winning shot or that game-tying shot or just a clutch shot in general. Also play phenomenal team defense, have DeAndre Ayton as your defensive anchor, but also play great defense on the perimeter, switch whenever need be. But one thing that I also do want to mention is if it is a rematch in the finals of the Bucks versus the Suns, DeAndre Ayton has proven the ability to guard Giannis at least somewhat effectively. Of course, you're not going to stop Giannis altogether, but if you're able to somewhat slow him down at least a little bit, it's going to help your chances of winning not only that game, but the entire series as well. So having that guy in DeAndre Ayton on Phoenix is a huge part of what they do. And I know his contract is up after the season's over. We'll see if the Suns are able to re-sign him or not, but I personally do think that DeAndre Ayton is a huge part of what the Suns do, and they really need to re-sign him after the season is over. But we'll see what happens in the rest of the playoffs. I certainly think the Suns are positioned very well. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Phoenix Suns are positioned to win an NBA championship this season, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.